Al Capone's legacy was that he corrupted Chicago. Marijuana's legacy is that it will corrupt California, and it's doing it now.
Retired Los Angeles Sheriff Sergeant Richard Valdemar is gravely concerned about the legalized marijuana movement in California. He shared with us a terrifying situation that's confronting someone who thought growing marijuana was a harmless activity and is in serious danger right now.
I got a call earlier this month from a person who was identified himself as an industrial marijuana grower. This gentleman, I'm going to call him Winnie. Winnie is the son of hippies and lived in the Central Valley of California. These hippies grew marijuana, and he learned his trade from his parents. His mother was into holistic medicine and healing people with herbs and stuff, and she was quite famous for that. And of course, he believes that marijuana is medically good for you, and so he became a grower of marijuana.
This Winnie had built a reputation for his quality pot.
He had tried to grow exclusively for people he felt that needed the marijuana as medicine, and he was able to hybrid a lot of them, the crop, to up the THC potency of them to quite a level of over 40%, he's claiming. So he became somewhat famous. In fact, if you read High Times magazine, they feature a bud of the month and the centerfold out, and that's the type of marijuana that this gentleman would grow.
His fame drew the attention of one of the drug cartels.
In the Central Valley, he became friends with Latinos, especially migrants who had come from Mexico. And one of these migrant guys he played soccer with, and he would again meet him later on in his career. While he was growing this medical marijuana, this guy approached him. We'll say his name is El Gallo. So El Gallo approaches him, and because of their past association and actually having worked together a couple of times growing marijuana, El Gallo suggested that he work with him, making a lot more money working for one of the cartels from Mexico. And they offered him a larger percentage of the cash crop when it was sold, and all the financing to get it started. So he built this marijuana farm.
This cartel rep, El Gallo, as Sergeant Valdemar has named him, would present himself as a businessman with a lucrative business opportunity.
First thing he did was approach a farmer, and he approached that farmer telling him that he would pay him this high rent for the use of his land, and they indeed did secure that land and rented it. In the past, he said that people kind of winked at this, and farmers, local farmers, agreed with many of the growers to have small patches of marijuana grow because they felt it was relatively harmless, and they got a good percentage of income from that. This is nothing like the hippie 60s marijuana. This is high content THC marijuana.
El Gallo would offer the same wonderful opportunities to get labor to work the fields and harvest the crop.
They also hired local farm hands who he felt had been mistreated by the local farmers, especially the large farming industrial companies. And these usually illegal workers were talked into working for better pay and better treatment on these marijuana farms. And so it began.
And suddenly it began to go sour. Winnie discovered the folks involved in the drug cartel weren't very nice people.
He soon found out that the people he was used to dealing with were much more easy to deal with. These cartel members were inclined to work them like slaves, that they rarely paid anybody. They kept saying that we'll pay you when the crop sells, not now. So they would eke out just a few dollars at a time so that these people would not starve, but all the time holding them basically captives, indentured servants, to work on the farm. This is the workers, the grower, even the farmer. Eventually they stopped paying the farmer. And what's the farmer going to do? Go to the police? and say that he's not being paid? Well, he's got a marijuana crop growing in his farm. He can't do that.
Suddenly, the farmers and workers found they were entirely at the mercy of the merciless drug cartels.
So these cartel members have basically intimidated or extorted everybody into doing their work and not paying anybody. Eventually, someone stole some plants from this crop. About 20 plants were stolen from the crop, and he found Winnie, the guy I'm talking about, found out that he was the one being accused of stealing the crop. And of course, that's convenient. Now they don't have to pay him for developing the crop and doing all the hard work required to make sure enough sun, water, and nutrients reach the crop.
You don't steal from the drug cartels. They have their own enforcement policies that are immediate and unforgiving.
And so he realized that he was in a position that might even cost him his life. And so he stole some plants and he made a run for the northern border of California. He had relatives in the northern U.S. and he was hoping to reach that area. Unfortunately, he was stopped by the police before he got there, and he was arrested for possession of these plants and taken into custody.
Winnie threw himself on the mercy of the local police, explaining the threat posed by the disgruntled drug cartels.
But the police officers were very happy with the large amount of marijuana that they had found on him and were going to prosecute him because he had a prior to the full extent of the law. And they weren't worried about this, they got a bird in the hand, not one in the bush, and so that's the one they wanted.
Winnie found Sergeant Valdemar through our programs on Full Disclosure.
And he said that I was one of the few officers that he had read or seen or heard speak who understood how the cartels take over programs, whether legitimate or illegitimate. They use this same bullying tactic to soon take over the thing. And if you try to dispute with them, they're not going to take you to court and sue you. They're going to kill you, and you're going to be found in one of those fields, buried.
Winnie was aware that being incarcerated provided no safety or security at all.
And now that he's caught by the police, he says he's in even more danger because whether he's in custody or out of custody, the long tentacles of the cartel can reach him, that they can hire somebody for just a few dollars to kill him. They've threatened his mother and his father, his family, and he's in a terrible predicament.
Sergeant Valdemar wanted to highlight the fact that this Winnie wasn't at all like you would portray a drug dealer.
I mean, he's not the kind of dangerous and threat that you might think of drug runners being, but he certainly opened the door that allowed these cartels to get a foothold in California. And so the whole state is now being taken over by these cartel-run marijuana industrial-sized farms.
Sergeant Valdemar has some very convincing arguments against legalizing marijuana.
One of the arguments against prohibition in the 20s and 30s was, it really doesn't stop anybody from drinking. They're going to use anyway. We can tax it and regulate it, and it'll be safer. And it takes the money out of the hands of Al Capone, who is charging money for the sale of beer. And if we legalize beer, then of course we're going to do away with organized crime. And how foolish that was to think. When we legalized beer, we didn't hurt Al Capone in the slightest. He just moved to bigger, heavier, more dangerous criminal activity. Same thing in California. You legalize marijuana, like we did with medical marijuana, you don't alleviate the criminal aspect of it. You have forces vying for the control of that drug and the profits, the huge profits that makes. And then he also corrupts the system. Al Capone's legacy was that he corrupted Chicago. Marijuana's legacy is that it will corrupt California, and it's doing it now.
What chance is there that the money, the massive profits that they're making from the marijuana crops is being used to influence the elected politicians to look the other way?
Well, it certainly is a great source for that money. One thing, there's no paper trail, right? It's cash or, type of transactions. And so There's no paper trail to show the corruption, track it backwards.
The death toll in Mexico's drug war from the start of the drug war in December 2006 may have already surpassed 40,000. The Mexican government released in January its last figure of 34,600 drug war-related killings. Since then, Mexico has experienced a slew of violence related to the drug war, including the discovery of over 300 corpses in mass graves in the northern city of Durango. And it appears this violence is beginning to spill over to the United States as well.
That's another myth, that the violence is coming across the border recently. The truth is, the violence has existed in Los Angeles for many years. One of the statistics I often quote is that 500 to 600 people are killed every year in Los Angeles by gang violence. This discounts an additional 500 and 600 that are killed each year by cartel violence, basically illegal aliens here murdering each other and then returning to Mexico. In fact, 95% of our unserved murder warrants are for Mexican nationals, people from Mexico.
And so Sergeant Valdemar has a warning for those who claim that legalizing marijuana is not a big deal.
Don't believe the media about it's harmless, marijuana is good for you, and all this. You know, there's genetic damage done from use of marijuana that nobody talks about. If you go to the California Narcotics Officers Association, CNOA, and look up the papers, the documented scientific papers that they have and their opinion pieces about legalization of marijuana and the damage done by marijuana. And think about this. One of the most dangerous cartels in Mexico is the Sinaloa cartel. It's run by a guy named Chapo Guzman. Chapo Guzman made his fortune through the sale of harmless marijuana. So the violence that we're seeing down in Mexico and crossing the border, a lot of it can be attributed to the sale of marijuana.
We want to know what you, the viewers, think. Please respond to our survey and leave your comments below. Number 1, were you aware that the Mexican drug cartel's strong-arm tactics have resulted in slave labor conditions on the industrial marijuana farms in California? Yes or no? Number 2, do you think that the Mexican drug cartel industry presents a greater threat than Al Capone during the Prohibition era? Yes or no? And number 3, do you think marijuana should be legalized in California? Yes or no? Please be sure to leave your comments below. I'm Leslie Dutton. Thank you.